Hello, and welcome to another Northstar Talks Politics. I am going to be talking about, and I apologize if it was my focus due to my long COVID. It's a brutal disability, but I'm going to be talking about a very, very, very important and very stressful subject today: concentration camps. Specifically, that at this time, Trump, the President of the United States, is sending people to concentration camps. First of all, let's start with a definition of concentration camps. Concentration camps are internment centers for political prisoners and members of national or minority groups, who are confined for reasons of state security, exploitation, or punishment, usually by executive decree or military order. Persons are placed in such camps often on the basis of identification with a particular ethnic or political group, rather than as individuals without benefit either of indictment or fair trial. Concentration camps are distinguished from prisons interning persons lawfully convicted of civil crimes, and from prison and war camps in which captured military personnel held under laws of war. Um, Also distinguishes them from refugee camps. It talks about they being used to intimidate and bully prisoners. Talks about the Nazi concentration camps and the Japanese internment centers, which were concentration camps. That's not even something up for any kind of debate. Um, Another definition: a place where large numbers of people, such as prisoners of war, political prisoners, refugees, and members of an ethnic or a religious minority group, are detained or confined under armed guard, usually especially in reference to camps created by the Nazis in World War II for the internment and persecution of Jews and other prisoners. That's Merriam-Webster. The last was Britannica. In case you doubt, of course, the claim that the U.S. did concentration camps, this is Harry Truman, who is something of a racist, a piece of shit, started the Cold War without really having any Democratic approval for it, had been shuffled in as to the vice presidency over the vast majority of Democratic voters by Democratic Party bosses in a rigged 1944 convention. Not a good guy, but even he said this. I'm pointing out what a bad guy he is, because when even someone who's undeniably a bad person says this, there's something to it. They were concentration camps. They called it relocation, but they put them in concentration camps, and I was against it. He probably wasn't against it. Truman is a liar, but um, we were in a period of emergency, but it was still the wrong thing to do. Harry S. Truman and Menno Miller, plain speaking, oral biography of Harry S. Truman. He's referring to the Japanese concentration camps. This is a whole article from the Japanese American National Museum. It's about the concentration camps, the internment camps. Um, in this war, we are seeing more euphemistic terms than previous conflicts. Consequently, the concentration camp, which the government is starting to build at Puyallup, is termed an assembly center, but is a concentration camp, even though temporary. That was from the Tacoma News Tribune in 1942. Speaking of the Japanese internment centers, the present procedure of keeping loyal American citizens in concentration camps on the basis of race for longer than is absolutely necessary is dangerous and repugnant to the principles of our government. Attorney General Francis Biddle, December 30th, 1943. So I point that out partly because the U.S. has done this before. The U.S. has established concentration camps before, which suggests that it's likely that it could happen again, even if you didn't believe that it was currently happening, and it is happening, and you shouldn't doubt it because it's been done before, and it meets all the definitions of concentration camp. Today, concentration camp, according to Wikipedia, is a prison or other facility used for internment of political prisoners or politically targeted demographics. And let me take a second here to point out that people are being sent to Seacon, El Salvador, and these other concentration camps by Trump are, in many, 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 many cases, being targeted because they are Hispanic. And when they are not, they're often being targeted because they spoke out against the Gaza genocide and are Palestinian. So it's Palestinians and Latinos who are being, on the basis of ethnic and political identity, illegally without indictment, deported, and in many cases to U.S. concentration camps around the world. A lot of Latinos to CCOP. There's other facilities. There was the Gaza protesters sent to a holding facility in Louisiana with horrendous conditions. And I have to emphasize, these conditions in these camps are horrendous. Prominent examples include British confinement of non-combatants during the Second Boer War. Those were the first concentration camps ever set up on Earth by the British. That was where the Nazis got the idea, actually. Mass internment of Japanese Americans by the U.S. during the Second World War. The Nazi concentration camps, which later morphed into extermination camps, and they're talking about gulags, which, even though many of the people in them did have fair trials, it's true some did not. That gets iffy because many of the political prisoners received trials and were actually guilty, but the sentences they received were trumped up, and there was an issue with forced confessions, which doesn't mean the trial was unfair, but the evidence submitted to trial was unfair sometimes. All right, what to know about SICA, El Salvador's mega prison for gang members. San Salvador, El Salvador. The crown jewel of El Salvador's aggressive anti-crime strategy, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read through all this. It's long. But here's something I want to highlight. A capacity of 40,000 inmates. Each cell holds 65 to 70 prisoners. They don't have facilities for prisons. The dining halls, break rooms, gym, and board games are for guards. Prisoners sit in rows in the court outside their cells for the talks. They get motivational talks. They're arranged endlessly. Great example of symbolic violence, the stuff that's done to them may not even be considered symbolic. Sometimes called terrorism confinement center. Notice trying to call anyone that Trump doesn't like or that the Salvadorian government doesn't like terrorists. That's you should have seen this coming back with the Patriot Act under Bush. This is where these kind of things lead. This camp was built in 2022, 2023, and that's a product of the U.S. security state expanding in the so-called war of terror that's been going on for all this time. Because, almost certainly some of the money for this came from the U.S. government. And by the way, this was established under Biden's years, probably with U.S. government funding. Just to give you an idea, this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. This is the U.S. degenerating into fascism. Severe overcrowding, overcrowding, lack of due process, inhumane conditions. I want to emphasize among those inhumane conditions are, get lost. Since March 2022, more than 84,000 people have been arrested, many with little to no due process. That's in El Salvador. So El Salvador has more than just SICA. It has multiple camps like these, and they're just arresting people without trial often. SICA itself, 40,000 inmates, 65 to 70. They do in a room. They don't receive visits. There are no programs to return to society, no workshops, educational programs. They're never allowed outside. They're kept in rooms. I don't know if it said in this particular article. Let's see if it does here. All right, well, it doesn't say in this one, but one of the ones I looked up and researched for this, they're kept in rooms 23 and a half hours a day with gang members, often members of rival gangs. So these are violent, dangerous rooms, 23 and a half hours a day. They're kept in this one room. They're never allowed outside, no visits, and the lights are never turned off. I've seen pictures of the bunk beds piled like 6 layers high in these rooms. They're extremely overcrowded. That's dangerous. You're going to see diseases like tuberculosis spread in such conditions. So just through disease, it's killing people. But if you keep human beings in a single room like that, unable to really stretch, unable to go anywhere, with constant light, no ability to sleep, they will die over time. Their health will degenerate due to sleep deprivation, and human beings will die if they're not allowed to sleep for long enough. Maybe some people manage to sleep in those conditions, but others will be unable, and some people will literally have heart attacks. This is a concentration camp that borders on an extermination camp because people are being murdered through these conditions. You don't have to gas someone for it to be killing someone, and they are not being brought back even when judges have ordered Trump to bring people back from CCOT. He has said, oh, I can't do it. People are being sent there based on ethnic identity, based on political affiliation. And I want to know, as part of this deportation programs, it's not just Latinos. It's not just Palestinians who spoke out of Gaza who are being deported. White people, such as Canadians and Europeans, have been deported. Were sent to illegal detention centers in the U.S. South and such. I don't know if they're specifically Canadians sent to CCOP, but they have been sent to some of these camps in Louisiana, Texas. Um, you are seeing them held, then deported sometimes, but kept in inhumane conditions till then. How long until it reaches the point? There have been U.S. citizens who have, quote, accidentally been sent to CCOT, Latinos who were U.S. citizens. How long does it naturalize U.S. citizens, I think? But how long until it's U.S. born ones? There was a baby sent who was U.S. born. A baby? All right? Who was deported. I remember that was Louisiana, the CCOP. But how long until this reaches the point of white, U.S. born citizens being sent? If you think you're safe because you're white, if you think you're safe because your family's been in this country 6, 7 generations, like mine, you are not safe. It doesn't matter how long your family's been here. It doesn't matter if you're white. You are at risk, especially if you're speaking out, saying things that are going to upset Trump. I know that I'm at risk, which is why I'm trying to get the hell out of this country, because it's only a matter of time otherwise till some thugs come and abduct me in the night and send me to one of these camps, one of these essentially concentration camps that will kill me. People died in the Nazi concentration camps, and even the ones that weren't explicitly gassing people due to hunger, due to cold. I would die due to severe sleep deprivation if I was sent to somewhere like Sika. I would have a heart attack, especially at being elevated risk of that due to long COVID. This is mass murder that's being slowly committed by the U.S. government, the most powerful government in the world. And so if you've ever wondered, by Trump specifically, executive order in violation of the will of the rest of the government, perhaps, but still the U.S. government, if you've ever wondered what you would do if you had lived during the early stages of the Holocaust, you're looking at it. This is people being sent to concentration camps, and I guarantee, even though I don't have official statistics on that, I guarantee that people are already dying in these camps. They're dying due to getting stabbed in these violent prisons. They're dying due to severe sleep deprivation and CCOT. People are dying. They're being sent without due process, having violated no laws. Their visas being canceled arbitrarily, instantly, and then the people deported within 24 hours without notice. So, they've been in the country 6 years, and then overnight their visa is canceled, unmarked van, unmarked officers come, stuff them into a van, they get sent to El Salvador, and they die there because of the conditions. That's murder. That is absolutely a violation of human rights. And this is not that much different than the early stages of the Holocaust. And this is what's happening now. 3 months into Trump's presidency? How bad is it going to get? 6 months, 9 months, 12, 24 months into his presidency. This is going to get worse. If you haven't yet, get up, protest, speak out about these things. This is a danger to the entire world. The United States government is powerful enough that if it goes fascist, it could easily conquer a lot of the world if it wanted. Even if you're outside the United States, you could see, U.S. tanks, U.S. fighter jets rolling into your country, taking over. Canada is at risk. Trump has talked about invading Canada. He probably won't do it, but maybe he will. Greenland is at risk. Parts of Africa, I'm sure, and Latin America, because Trump is probably smart enough not to go after nuclear-armed Europe, but he might go after a lot of the third world and take over these countries. The whole world is at risk due to this. You have to speak up. You have to say something. This is, by the way, if you're wondering why it got this way, this is where capitalism inevitably leads. As conditions get worse, anxieties grow. You get people like the Trump-tards, the MAGA Americans who got upset about where they saw the country headed. You saw, let me be clear, some of them were actually financially well off themselves, but they bought into stoked racial tensions and fear mongering, which was enabled and successful because there are people who are poor who are struggling, and it's easy to stoke racism among such people. Fox News does it all the time. Stuff that's further right, like InfoWars type stuff, stokes racism. This is what capitalism does. It stokes racism and fear and tensions. And then when conditions get such that there's a real danger of, say, raising taxes on the rich or even nationalizing industries, turning to socialism, when the ruling class starts to become nervous about these things, they start funding fascists like Trump. And they're doing it well ahead of. It's not like the U.S. is on the verge of a socialist revolution, but they know if things keep getting worse, eventually there's a real danger to their money and their power. So the billionaire class, they fund Trump. They funded his campaign in 2024. They funded his inauguration. They are currying favor with him. Don't forget all the billionaires who stood behind Trump in his inauguration. Um, the only way you're going to stop this, if you're American, but the only way we're going to stop this is demanding a new constitution. I mean, literally. You roll back some of the abuses, the laws, you might buy a little time, but we'll be right back here in 30, 40 years. We need to stand up and demand a new constitutional convention, which is legal under U.S. law. A constitutional convention can be held, a new constitution can be written, and it needs to be one that legally forbids money from being in politics and guarantees certain basic human necessities like food, housing, and healthcare. That the government has to find a way to provide that to all people, to just start to chip away at some of the anxieties that are feeding the racism that feeds fascism. If you don't do something like this, and while we're at it, we should really be setting conditions in such a constitution that allow the nationalization of fossil fuel industries, because global warming, climate change, is also creating conditions that will lead to fascism. Things are going to get a lot worse due to climate change with mass refugees and such. And the only way that we can rein in climate change soon enough to prevent billions of refugees around the planet, mass starvation, wars, is if we nationalize the fossil fuel industries and forcibly decrease the production of oil, natural gas, and coal. That is, U.S. government takes over these industries, maybe compensates the investors, and says we're closing these mines, we're closing these oil wells, but we're not doing any new expansion of oil drilling, because if we continue to do this, we will doom the planet and we'll get fascism, even if we start trying to guarantee things like housing, healthcare, food to all citizens in the Constitution and forbid money from politics. The rich will still find a way to fuel fascism if there are conditions as bad as they will get with climate change. It might be 100 years from now instead of 20, 34 years from now, but there will still be fascism that comes to America otherwise. There will be enormous numbers of climate refugees from Africa and Latin America who will try and come to the United States, come to Europe. Fascism will spread around the globe. It's bad what climate change can lead to. So, stand up, act, think big. It can't be enough just to get rid of Trump, just to impeach him, just to have him removed from office. J.D. Vance, the guy who visited the Pope and then the Pope died the next day, which some people are saying he killed the Pope. I doubt that. Let me be clear. I doubt that's the case. I have a family member who thinks that he might have poisoned the Pope. I doubt that. I think more likely, if he had any involvement, it was more along the lines of he had a stressful conversation with the Pope, who was extremely sick and close to death, and maybe staring pure evil in the face, because that's what J.D. Vance is. He's pure fucking evil. Maybe that was too stressful for the Pope's failing health, and he died. He probably would have died in a few weeks, but maybe it hastened it by a couple weeks. That's at most. But he is an evil piece of shit. And if you think that J.D. Vance is going to be better than Trump, because if Trump's removed, J.D. Vance takes over just as Ford took over when Nixon was impeached, or stepped down rather, because he was about to be impeached, which he did just so he couldn't there wouldn't be a precedent of impeaching presidents, so that future scumbag Republicans would be safer from the threat of impeachment, because technically Nixon stepped down before his impeachment. But if you think J.D. Vance is going to be better and isn't going to push the country towards fascism, you're wrong. In fact, J.D. Vance is a smarter, more charismatic, more handsome, younger fascist, because Trump, could die dead and his plan's going to drop dead due to old age and his plans be interrupted, because he's not a young man, Trump, but J.D. Vance is, so he's not likely to just die of a stroke or a heart attack or something. So it's not just a matter of getting rid of Trump. You have to attack the basic fundamental causes of the problem Otherwise, concentration camps will keep going up. Trump has requested the president of El Salvador build, quote, 5 more camps just like it, referring to CCOT. CCOT has a capacity of 40,000 people. 40,000 people. 5 more camps would be capacity for at least 200,000 more people. If Trump's going to deport 200,000 more people, which would be a massive upscaling. Remember, CCOT had people who were not from the U.S. El Salvador. Most of the capacity was filled with people locally. If these are 5 camps just for U.S. deportees, that's going from like what? 5,000 by the end of this, before CCOT is full, or let's say even a few hundred, from a few hundred people to 200,000 people being deported. That's a massive scale up. If you think it's bad now, the oppression, the fear is going to get worse when it's 200,000 people. If the El Salvador president, air quotes, really a U.S. backed strongman, if he does that, if he builds 5 more camps and then Trump sends people to fill them, that would require 200,000 people to be deported. And at that point, I guarantee you, he's not just sending Latinos, he's sending white Americans. He's sending people like me who dare speak out against his government. White, my family's been in this country for like 6, 7 generations. He'll deport me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I was born here. He will go after anyone who is opposed to him. This is extremely dangerous. This is also why I'm trying to get my YouTube channel to where I can monetize it and get the hell out of the country, because no country will take an immigrant who can't support themselves. If I can monetize my channel, I can say this is a means of financial self-support, and then I can emigrate. I'm looking at Sweden because they're particularly favorable to disabled Americans and, well, immigrants generally. Spain and Sweden are both good places for someone who has a disability to move to, but Spain is at risk of fascists taking over. There's currently a left-wing government in charge, but if the left-wing government goes, the policies on immigrants could suddenly reverse. So Sweden. Although I'd prefer somewhere warmer like France, Belgium, Germany, but I have to get the hell out of here because I can't get out and stand on the protest lines. There are days where I can barely get out of bed with my long COVID, where I physically am unable. I barely trudge to eat breakfast and go back to sleep and sleep 20 hours. If my posting schedule doesn't look like that, that's because I create a buffer. So there are days I haven't record anything, but there's like 6 videos that posted, but they were recorded weeks in advance. Yeah, but there are days where I can't do anything even. I'm not able to work in this health condition. I'm not able to go out and march for 4 hours and shout, and that's assuming I don't get my head beat in by fascist cops. I don't use the term lightly, but these are cops who are increasingly supporters of fascist regime, so fascist cops. Didn't like people throwing that term around before, but now Trump has just got Musk doing Hail Hitler salutes, and he's building concentration camps. He's a fascist. At some point, you just got to call a duck a duck. And fascism at risk of taking this country over. So, anyways, stand up, protest. If you want a specific thing you need to a goal to keep in mind, the only way we're going to set the system so it doesn't end up back here eventually, the only way we cannot make this a losing battle is to change the rules of the game, to demand a new U.S. Constitution, to hold a new constitutional convention, write a new constitution that's probably loosely based on the old one, but has a bunch of changes because the amendment process is too slow. America's journeying to fascism too quickly, and it's too hard to mobilize enough people to get big scale changes. You're not going to be able to keep people mobilized long enough to do like 12 amendments. So a new convention. This is not a new thing. The far right has actually been talking about a new constitution for a while, but they wanted to rewrite the constitution in a right-wing direction. We need to rewrite the constitution in a way that makes fascism impossible, that prevents money in politics, because that's part of what fuels fascism, that places restrictions on billionaire funding of and ownership of media outlets. There's a lot of changes need to be made and need to be discussed, and probably won't get everything. But if we can get enough, maybe we can stabilize democracy in the U.S. or reinstitute democracy, because what we have now is not democracy. It's plutocratic oligarchy. It's ruled by the rich. Bring back democracy, even just accomplishing that would be a huge feat. So, hope you folks enjoyed this video. Take care of each other. Be kind yourselves, and may you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Until next time, this Northstar, adieu, and best luck.